Welcome back, everybody, to episode 23 of the Back Lounge Podcast. My name is Tank. I'm your host, and I'm a tour manager and guitar tech with over 15 years of experience in the touring music industry. And if you're new to this podcast, what we do here is just invite on bands, artists, other musicians, other roadies, and we just have conversations about whatever. I don't have questions written out. I don't have, Q&A stuff. I just come into these podcasts with whatever or what is in my head already, and we just see where the conversation takes us. And I love that because I feel like it's more natural and we can get to know each other. And for today's episode, I was lucky enough to get Kyle and Leo from Brand of Sacrifice, one of my personal favorite bands that I've been listening to probably about for the last year or two, like pretty regularly. And I was super excited for this one, but I will say before we go any further, I gotta apologize for the long gap between the last episode and this one. There is a reason for that. This intro that I'm actually recording right now, I'm doing super last minute. I already had one done, but I wanted to do something that's more current and up to date because I had originally planned on having this episode out like at least 10 days before this is coming out. But I was super busy. I was out guitar teching on the North American Powerwolf tour, which was fantastic. But unfortunately, I came home with COVID and I had successfully avoided it for 3 years. But go figure, my first full tour back after having a kid and stuff, I got it. But I was lucky, man. I didn't have terribly many symptoms. The only big thing was I was just gassed all the time, man. Just super drained and tired. Like 5-hour naps in the middle of the day, forgetting things. I was supposed to record a podcast with one of the guys from Nanowar Steel the other day. Totally forgot about it. So I've got to reschedule that. And I wanted to have this done, but I didn't. But I just finished editing like our conversational piece of this. And I will say, not that it matters to you guys listening, this was probably the most extensive edit I've ever had to do just because of audio quality issues. I had to do a lot of editing of levels and stuff like that. So if this doesn't sound perfect, I do apologize. I did the best that I absolutely could, but at least for me, when I was going through, everything's, understandable and good. So hopefully you guys still enjoy this, but these guys, man, are just so busy and they just haven't stopped. One of those current things that I was talking about was before we recorded, they were prepping for tour, but right now they've already started the second leg of the Pain Remains tour with Lorna Shore. And they've also got Shadow of Intent, Body Snatcher, Boundaries on that tour. Massive lineup. And they've already had a few shows and everybody that's gone has said it's fantastic. And I saw the Pain Remains tour on the first leg when it came through Nashville and it was awesome, man. So I'm super stoked that these guys are on the second leg. And then later this year, they're going to the UK to do shows with Spirit Box and Loathe. And then they've got some European festivals. And then a couple weeks after this podcast comes out, they're actually releasing a brand new EP called Between Death and Dreams. That is going to release on April 21st, 2023. And if anybody is interested in supporting the band or wants to check that out, they do have a few singles that are out already. But you can also go to brandofsacrifice.com. It's got links to all their socials. It's got tour dates where you can listen. And they've got all of their merchandise on there that you can check out too. And speaking of merchandise, one of the other things we talked about on this podcast is Shibori Threads. That is the clothing company that Kyle and Leo have started together, where they do really sick, like tie-dye designs for other bands and brands. They actually have licensed stuff with a lot of bands and a lot of different brands and stuff. You'll see in this, conversation, I was wearing a Children of Bodom hoodie that is theirs from Shibori. Really cool stuff. And if you want to check out what they have for that, you can go to ShiboriThreads.com. But I've been talking for a while and I just kind of want to get you guys into this one. So let's get going. All right. Well, we're back. Episode 23 of the Back Lounge Podcast. I always need to check. I never know. Welcome, first timers, Kyle and Leo from Brand of Sacrifice. How are you?
What's good? What's
How you
going
doing?
on, man?
Oh, just fucking, I'm having an evening coffee and just enjoying some company from a couple
coffee.
dudes. I love it.
Nice. Yeah, we just ate some pretty crazy food. So
What's
we're feeling full and sleepy. We
What's
have some
what's
hummus and
crazy for you?
pita. We had some flatbread. We had some donuts. We had a little bit of everything.
Wait, hummus, flatbread, and donuts all together?
Yeah. Good combo.
I mean, it sounds better than what I just had. I couldn't eat all day because I had to get blood work done today, and I just ate about $30 worth of Taco Bell before we did this. So,
oh, good.
Nice.
That's a lot of Taco Bell, dude.
I'm a dumpster, dude. I eat like an idiot.
Oh, we've been eating really bad too. So
Oh,
no judgments here.
I imagine you guys you got off a pretty solid tour. I really looking forward to hearing about that because January and February, you guys were out on the We Came as Romans tour with Era, and I follow you guys on social media, and I was just seeing the pictures and the videos from that, and that just looked like such an amazing tour for you guys. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it was excellent. It was a 3-band bill, which you don't see too much these days, and I think if that was the meta, I think it would be great for both the bands and the fans. I think sometimes, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier, before we started, that having a bill of 5-6 bands that are very heavy can get a little bit tiring.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, we had great diversity between all 3 bands. Every band sounded different. We were obviously quite heavy in comparison, but we also had the collab song with We Came as Romans. We did a song called Dark Bloom with them. We did a reimagined version for those who don't know. We got to play that. So the fans were very stoked from both camps. So it was a great time. Everybody on the tour was great people, great vibes, and everything was very smooth. So
that's awesome, man. I was actually going to ask about that because the reimagined version that you guys did with We Came as Romans, that's one of those moments for me where I've talked about many times. One of the most like magical, cool things I like about music is that you can tie your emotions to music that you hear in the time. And I'll never forget the day that I heard that song for the first time because I can't remember why, but I know I was angry about something and that song was exactly what I needed that day. So I love that collaboration, but I'm curious about how it came about because most of the time when bands do reimagined and stuff like that, it's usually more acoustic or lighter. How did that all come together? We're like, hey, we want you guys to do Dark Bloom with us, but it's going to be heavy as hell. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so WeCar actually reached out to us for that through their management team, and they just suggested to do like one of their bigger tracks on the album with them, with more of a heavy Brand of Sacrifice spin on it. And we thought it was a pretty cool idea because, like you said, it's usually acoustic reimaginings that end up happening. But yeah, it was. We were super stoked on it because we had never done something like that before, and especially across genres. I think it turned out extremely well.
I don't know if that had been done before.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Between like a metalcore band and a deathcore band like that. Like,
I can't think of anything.
And usually what's been happening is bands will re-release the same song that they've already released, but with a new guest vocal on it. For example, like the Fit for a King, August Burns Red split comes to mind. Stuff like that is usually what you'd expect. And I think that was the original idea, actually, was just have me do some vocals on the existing track. But then we thought, you know what, let's actually take it a step further and have the whole band collab and add the production elements and the actual Brand of Sacrifice toolkit to the mix. So I think I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. It was a ton of fun to do.
Oh, dude. I mean, it was such a cool thing for me too, because while it is clearly Dark Bloom, it's also clearly Brand of Sacrifice. Like there's the overall sound on that one definitely sounds like it could have been on one of your albums. And I just think that's cool. I remember seeing that and being like, there needs to be more of this. Like, I want to see like bands doing reimagined stuff that just goes heavier. Cause like you said, like nobody really does that at all.
Yeah, it's true. And that track in particular just like translates well when you put a heavy spin on it. So yeah, it just really worked out. It definitely turned out pretty unique too, in my opinion, with all the post production that we added.
Yeah,
I think it's really cool.
So you specifically, Leo, seem like you're like the production brain kind of in the band. Correct me if I'm wrong. It just seems like it from my end. How much of that, like, did you just get your hands on their tracks and just get in the production zone and just pretty much do whatever with that? Did you have free reign to do whatever?
Yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
They were basically like, yeah, here are the multi-tracks, take a listen. And I just ended up basically retracking the whole song. And I still use like a good portion of the tracks that were initially in there, as you can hear. But yeah, I just added a bunch of new stuff on top of it. Changed a few kick patterns around on the drums and such. I kind of wanted the breakdowns that existed there to feel a little bit different. So I did some work on those, and then obviously the ending that everybody talks about, that wasn't in the song at all. So we just popped that in there for fun. And I remember when we were doing it, we were like, man, I don't know if like they're gonna approve this. Like, this is ridiculous, and they ended up just loving it. So I'm super happy that we were able to put it out in that way, because it totally elevates the song to like a completely different thing.
I agree, and it's funny because it doesn't matter what genre of music it is. What I've noticed with a lot of bands is like bands love how heavy, like musicians, like band members in a lot of these bands, they just love heavy, filthy stuff. Like a lot of the new metal that is sent to me is from, he's actually from Toronto. His name's Nate. He's the guitar player for Thomas Rhett, like country, Nashville country.
Okay. Cool.
And he is such a metalhead, and a lot of the guys like in country music in Nashville are all super metalheads, which I find so interesting because it's like, so I want to start seeing that. I want to see like country deathcore and see how that works out. I don't know if it's going to translate as well, but
I don't know about that one. But who knows?
But I mean, right? Dude, perfect example. My last tour before like COVID and having a kid and stuff, I was working for this country artist, and the first day I ever worked for him, I came in with no rehearsals. I like somebody got fired and I came in. We start sound check, and their drummer sits on the drum kit and starts playing the extremely familiar kick pattern of Bleed by Meshuggah. And I'm just like, wait, what? And then
metal musicians are sneaking in there, man.
Yeah. And then the guitar player, one of the guitar players I was teching for, was like, hey man, let me see my Explorer. I'm like, okay. And he starts riffing along with it. And I'm like, okay, I got two guys in this band that are ripping Meshuggah on the first day I'm here. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, they're out there. They're definitely out there, man.
And the majority of people, techs and roadies that work in country right now are all like guys that I toured with on Warped Tour like 15 years ago, and dudes from metal bands. It's like everybody moved to Nashville and just started working for country bands because you tour for 3 days a week and that's it.
Oh yeah.
Weekend warrior.
I would imagine. Yeah. And like a lot of metal musicians these days end up producing outside the genre as well. Like a good one to mention is Tim Henson. He does a ton of pop and hip hop in the mainstream now. And like, I think there was like a Doja Cat rendition of one of her songs that had sort of like a rock or alternative kind of spin on it. And that had a bunch of metalheads involved. So it's like, it's definitely making its way to the mainstream, which, in my opinion, is very encouraging. It hasn't been there for so long. So I think it's a good thing for everybody to contribute outside genres or across genres. It's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of this, what did you guys, I want to get into the kind of the quick band history too, but like, when you were growing up and stuff, I mean, what was music for you guys? What were you guys listening to?
For me, dad rock. I was raised on like Guns N' Roses and shit. So
nice.
Growing up, Linkin Park, System of a Down, In Flames, a lot of Melodeath.
You're like me.
There's this band from Canada called Billy Talent.
Oh,
that was big for me. Sum 41, Simple Plan, all that kind of stuff. Blink.
Okay, so we've all got to be around the same age then, 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that you're speaking the turn of the century new metal pop punk wave, dude.
Yeah, everybody like kind of went through that.
Yeah,
those phases,
Yeah, that's awesome. So, You guys, there's probably people out there that already know this, and I'm sure a lot has been talked about, but like for me, getting you guys on is always fun because listeners might not know you, and I don't know the history too, but you guys snuck up on me kind of out of nowhere. Like over the last few years, extreme metal has started getting very popular again. And for a while, I kept seeing every time I'd go online, people are like, you got to check out Brand of Sacrifice. And then I finally did. And I was like, where the fuck did these guys come from? And from what I understand, I would like to hear like the quick story from you guys, but from what I understand, you guys had been in bands together before, but Brand officially was what was first released. It was 2018, right?
Yeah, it was May of 2018. We released our EP called The Interstice independently at that point. It got re-released on a small label shortly after that in the fall, but that was technically the beginning of the online presence, at least. Mm-hmm. We didn't tour till a year later or so, 2019.
Okay. How does it work out for you guys with, some of you guys living in Canada, some of you guys living in the States? Like, do you guys, I gotta imagine like in the early days, like were you guys just sending each other stuff online or were you meeting up, and how did that work?
It's primarily Leo and I writing the tunes. Mm-hmm. So it's just sort of either jumping on calls or just chatting on Messenger and sending stuff to each other. That's typically how it's done. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, the reason why I think that works well for us is because there was a period of time where we did write together in a room. So we kind of know what we both like in a sense, since we've been working together for so long at this point. So we don't even have to really discuss it too much. It just kind of happens naturally.
Yeah. So when you prep for a tour like you did with We Came as Romans, does the whole band get together and do you guys do rehearsals, or do you guys just know your shit that well that you just get out there and you're good?
We mostly do rehearsals just to make sure tech's working, most of all.
Yeah.
And then just go through the set, shake the rust off a little bit, and make sure everything's feeling nice in the set. Timings between songs and songs going into each other. And it's mostly just that kind of stuff, as opposed to actually the jamming part. We're pretty dialed in individually beforehand.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny because lately I've been seeing a lot of bands that like they skip out on production rehearsals, and it blows my mind. Like right now I'm on a break. I've been guitar teching for Powerwolf, and it's their first time in the United States ever, and Canada. We did Montreal. No rehearsal day. They just came over, and the crew had a tech day where we could get everything together, make sure it was working. But like, there's no band rehearsal. Like the first time we knew everything was going to work was at sound check of the first show. And it was like,
I think when you have like, I mean, that makes sense, especially if they have a more of like a robust crew. Yeah. Like for us, we usually have pretty minimal crew. So we're the ones doing the teching.
Yeah.
And we're the ones basically dialing everything in beforehand. Like obviously we have front of house and all that. But that's the main reason why we do the rehearsals, just to make sure everything's working and we all know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I also
the production piece of it.
I also understand from the situation you're referring to. Sometimes it's tough when you're coming from another country internationally. We definitely don't rehearse when we go to Europe or UK often, because it's just hard to coordinate locations and whatnot. It's easier to fly to the first destination or wherever your bus might be, for example. So I kind of understand that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, as long as, depending on what your crew is, and a lot of these European bands, though, it's like some of these European bands that are like arena sized in Europe, they come here and it's like clubs and they bring minimal crew. So it's like, I think on the Powerwolf thing, we have like 4 crew, including me.
Okay.
So it's not like a giant operation or anything by any means, but I get what you're saying. Cause years and years before I became a roadie, like I was in a band and like same thing. It was van and trailer. We had nobody with us, but us 5, we did everything. So it's like, I totally feel that. And I get that. And I think like I've done a good job of letting fans and people know, like, just because a band that you like is either signed or getting really big tours and stuff like that, it doesn't mean that they're like rock stars and have a full crew. A lot of your favorite bands that are still touring that you think are big probably have a tour manager / front of house guy and a merch guy. And like, they're still doing that hard work, man, you know, and it's, you see that on a lot of levels of a lot of those metal tours out right now.
Definitely, man. And like touring is just getting more and more expensive too. So I mean, it makes
everything's
sense.
up.
Yeah.
Literally everything from merch prices to gas to people's rates are up.
Yeah.
Because everybody took a hit from the pandemic, so I understand. Yeah, it's definitely much more expensive than pre-pandemic for sure.
Bro,
when the operation.
When we're off camera again, I'll tell you, because this shouldn't be public information, but I've been getting bus quotes right now for the summer tour with Electric Callboy. And I've tour managed before. I've seen bus quotes in the past. Dude, some of the quotes I'm getting back right now, every time I see my email, I'm just like,
dude,
what?
Yeah,
like, how are bands even affording to tour right now? This is ridiculous.
You know, it's crazy. And again, this probably shouldn't be in there either, but I remember 2 years ago, we were looking at bandwagons and it was like 15, 16K for a tour. Now it's 33.
Yeah, dude.
So it's literally double.
Yeah.
Like, it's nuts. That's crazy.
It's nuts, dude. That's why, like, again, I tell all the fans and stuff that watch, I was like, you know, the big hot topic right now is, merch fees. Everybody's talking about merch fees. And I get involved here and there because I was a merchandise manager for like the first 8 years of my career. And I think this stuff should be talked about. And I think bands should be transparent about it. But my issue is that sometimes the truth is being exaggerated or not told all the way. Like, for example, recently, I think it was Monuments that made an announcement like, hey, we're not going to sell merch at our show in Italy tonight, or I think they're in Greece, because we have a 47% merch fee.
Right.
But and I wouldn't have sold merch either. I would have told the band I was working for, just don't even do it tonight. Tell people to go to your online store. But the truth is, 27% of that was tax.
It was VAT.
So it's like, I side with the bands. I get it, but I'm like, tax is tax. You would have had to pay that even if you didn't have a merch fee. Like, that's just added on. But, you know, my take with these merch fees, man, is like, you know, I imagine you saw this on your last tour, but sometimes all the support you get as a band is just you show up and somebody points in a corner and says, there's your spot, go for it. And at the end of the night, we're going to take 20-25%. And that to me is ridiculous. If the venue has done nothing for you guys, then that's a whole different argument, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, the first issue is it's already in the contract, so you have to speak with your booking agent first. That's where it would start with. As far as the rate, if you're going to have a 20 or 15% rate, then you should probably have someone doing the merch for the bands and being an actual vendor. Because that's a ridiculous amount of cut just to offer a 6x6 spot in a room. You know what I mean? So, or 6x3 spot in a room. Sometimes
proportionate to the retail space you actually get in a venue.
So to me, I mean, but that's at the end of the day, it's in the contract, so the bands need to have that discussion beforehand. You know, but there, you could also say that, okay, maybe the promoter, the venue wouldn't book it without the merch rate in there.
True.
That's another topic. But I think if they're going to take that level or that amount, they should be vending it. That would make more sense. I don't care about the bar split stuff that people say, oh, the band should get a split. No, that doesn't make sense. But that's just what I think, at least.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And one of the things that, again, I've tried to tell people too is like, I actually had like, I think it was Alpha Wolf's fans kind of came after me for a minute, because when that big thing with Alpha Wolf happened where they were on stage being like, fuck this venue, fuck this promoter, they're taking all this. And then in their same video that they posted, then their guitar player's like, yeah, of course we paid it anyways because it was in our contract. And I'm like, that's the big problem here too, is like, you can't act like the venue are bad guys that are stealing money when it's in your contract. Now, to what Kyle was saying, that's something the agent needs to work out. And the venues and the promoters definitely have the upper hand. They could just say, well, play somewhere else then. And then what happens? You know, you're kind of roped into the merch fee no matter what, which sucks, you know?
There's more discovery, I think, that needs to happen to have before people start to, you know, pull out the pitchforks and whatnot. So that's probably where we need to start, at least, is learn a little bit more about how it's working on the back end with the agents and the venues and promoters. Yeah.
And that's, you know, the other thing too, is I remember I saw somebody on Instagram be like, well, if it's a 20% merch fee, you know, the band is, if they sell 10 grand, they're still making $8,000. I was like, well, not necessarily, because the one thing that the fans don't think about is the cost of printing, the cost of shipping. And like you said, cost is up anything. So it's like, you know, I did this for years and I knew what our costs were. And it's like, even with a 20% merch fee, sometimes you're really after costs. I mean, you're talking 50% or less.
Yeah, around 50% margin is to be expected, I would say.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much average on the tours we do. It's around 50 to 55% profit.
So in your opinion, because this is something that's asked by a lot, I'm just kind of curious what you guys think as band members. Would you rather people still buy merchandise at the show, or would you rather them just buy it online from you guys?
I'd say the show, because it's important to provide an experience. People go to the show because they want to see you as human beings. They also want to have something to return home with, something maybe that's exclusive to that show, because you want to build memories, and that's the point of a show, really. So I mean, online is awesome too. You know, it helps. You would support the band more, most likely, being online, depending on what kind of structure you have with the merch company you're working for, or if you do it independently. But I still think it's good to buy at the show. Because at the end of the day, you know, I still want our fans to have a good experience and have something they're excited to wear and talk about. So it has its benefits outside of just the margin involved.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is like, I've been going to a lot of shows over the last few months. I've seen no decline in people at shows. Dude,
crazy.
The line for merchandise for Lorna Shore when they were in Nashville was literally like 2 hours long at all times. It was like the venue people were like, we've never seen anything like this at this place ever.
Yeah.
And then it was the same when I saw Ginger like a week later. It was like, well, fans are definitely not that mad because they're still lining up and buying, which is good.
And like, if you want to get into it from a business standpoint, at what opportunity are you going to see that type of traffic or volume? Merch.
An online merch drop can be successful depending on what the item is. If it's limited, maybe. But it's not the same as when you're in person. It's way more volume and opportunities to network and meet the people that are supporting you. That's what I take from it. I mean, often I'm there at the merch table. I usually go after the set, and I'll talk to every single person that is coming by. So
that's awesome. So speaking of merchandise and exclusive items, while we're at it, because I'm curious about this too, you two started Shibori Threads. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's funny is this has become kind of a joke now. I got home from tour and I got this hoodie that I'm wearing right now. For anybody that's not watching on YouTube, I'm wearing this beautiful black and red tie-dye Children of Bodom hoodie that is from Shibori Threads. I have wore this hoodie every single day for maybe 2 weeks now. I have washed it in between. I'm not that grody. But every time I jump on Twitch, people are like, oh, he's got the hoodie on again. And when I bought this, I'm not going to lie, I always knew about Shibori. I always looked at the website and I'm like, man, this is sick designs. And some of it, if I'm being honest, is a little like loud for my personal taste. But like when I saw this, it's like black and red is my favorite color combo. Children of Bodom is one of my favorite bands ever. I bought it immediately. And I don't think I found out until like 3 days later that it was actually your guys' brand. So I want to know more about this too. Was this, it seems like this was kind of a pandemic project for you guys that turned into a full thing. Yeah, let's hear it. I'm stoked on this.
So, I guess the reason why it started was because it was supposed to be sort of like a side project, like a passion project to kind of help stand up and support some of our peers in the scene at the time. And the reason why it came about was because historically, when Brand of Sacrifice did, tie-dye focus drops on tour or online, like they would just crush every single time. And I think this was 2019, maybe 2020, summer of.
It was 2020.
Yeah,
because we were coming back from, we were in Europe at the time, and all the announcements came about where the travel was going to be shut down. So we had to actually jump on a plane at 3 a.m. and come back. So I think we'd been home for like a month or two, and then started thinking about this.
Yeah. So, and it was also around that time where you started to see a lot of tie-dye trending in like mainstream retailers like H&M, Forever 21, places like that. So, it was just really good timing. And I mean, today the brand has grown tenfold. We've worked with some of our favorite artists over the years, and just keeps on crushing. So we're super happy about it. I mean, it's both Kyle and I were really involved in the business end of the band and of that type of thing. So, Shibori kind of came naturally to us, and it just like exponentially grew like crazy over the past couple of years. So I'm really pleased about that, and I'm really happy to see that you're wearing your children's hoodie still.
Yeah, me too.
One of the things that I saw was in the FAQ on the website, because it's probably a question that gets asked a lot, is are these officially licensed items? And they
Absolutely.
are. I know how this works. I know you can't just put a band logo on it and make it, but you guys have done collaborations with a lot of bands in the scene that a lot of people know, but something specifically like this, I was like, I'm not going to lie. I was like, how the hell did these guys get licensing for Children of Bodom? I mean, a band that even at the time, technically was not really a band anymore.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of like red tape and like politics you guys have to play to do licensing for a lot of these bands, or are they usually pretty just like, yeah, cool?
Kind of depends. I mean, for us, we worked really hard on building credibility for the brand early on. And as a result of that, we were able to really grow our network. So, sometimes we work directly with band members themselves. Sometimes we work with their managers. Sometimes we work with merch companies and those license holders. So it kind of depends on the artist. But I think without that initial goal of remaining credible and legit and making sure everything was official, we probably wouldn't be at the point where we are now. So it kind of varies depending on who you're working with, but it comes from years of hard work and building relationships, I guess.
But I mean, I just pulled up the website right now while we're talking just to look again. And for anybody that's listening later, you can go to ShiboriThreads.com, or I'll put links in the description on the YouTube. But it's like some of the collaborations on here are they're varied a lot as well. Like some of the top stuff on here right now is like The Devil Wears Prada, Ginger, Animals as Leaders. And then something as random as like Dying Fetus. When I saw that, I was like, what? Like,
yeah.
I mean, there's some great stuff on here, man. I mean, it's a Cradle of Filth, another one. Like, you guys have had some phenomenal drops on this, man. And I love little side passion projects like this that bands get involved in. And that's why I'm just like so stoked on this. Like, so congrats on this so far, because it's really cool.
Thank you. Also, when is this coming out? Because we can tell you what we have coming up.
Well, that all depends on if I feel like editing it while I'm on tour next week on a day off, which I probably will. This will probably come out not next week, but the next. I don't know. I never know what day it is. I don't even know what day it is right now.
Okay, so if it comes out next week, we have Gojira coming out on Friday.
Oh,
which will be sick. And if it comes out sometime in April, we're working with Namco on Dark Souls, the video game franchise. Yeah, so that's going to be our first video game crossover that we're doing. It's going to be the entire month of April. We're working on that today, actually, just setting all that up. So
that's
huge,
sick.
huge things. Like we're really, really excited about.
Damn. Well, I'll probably release this the last week of March, so that'll be good timing. I mean, speaking, really quick side story. Speaking of not knowing what day it is, like I was having dinner with my wife and my daughter last night, and I got an email notification that's like, somebody has entered your Zoom chat, and I was like, dude, did I get my days off? Like, am I supposed to be? No. Am I supposed to be doing this now? Like, did you guys just get on last night thinking last night was the night?
We had one too many green tea shots, and we're excited to get on and talk to you.
That's
literally
amazing.
That's why.
You guys are officially the earliest. Most artists show up to these late, and like you guys are officially now the earliest. Yeah. Dude, I get it. I never get upset about that stuff because everybody has crazy schedules, especially if you guys have like an album release and like PR or whatever has booked like full days. Like when I did that podcast episode with Anders from In Flames, I was the last of his day and he had already been doing it for like 9 hours.
Wow.
And I'm just like, oh,
that's brutal.
I'm sorry, dude. Like, I don't want to keep you, but like that's the one thing that there's so much more work in the music industry for band members than what people actually see, dude. Like you guys don't get days off.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it kind of depends on the position you're in as a band, I guess. Like for us, we've done it independently for the majority of the band's career, I guess. So it's a little more work for us than if you have management or a label, I think. But even then, I mean, you still have to wear a lot of hats and sort of understand some of the business. And again, like Kyle and I love doing that stuff, so we just naturally don't have a lot of bandwidth to do things every single day because we have our hands in so many things. But yeah, I mean, it can be a lot, definitely be a lot.
And I mean, so correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you guys have distribution and stuff, but no management, no label, all you guys, right?
We do have management now, but that's a new development with the last 6-8 months.
Yeah, 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
We just hit, I think, a point where we never want to be the most intelligent people in the room. We want to learn from others. And I think we hit a point where there was too much discovery required and not enough time to do it. So we wanted to sort of fast track things. We found an amazing partner to work with Rock Nation. So that's a very new development for us. Previously, it was just Leo and I doing all the day-to-day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I always am surprised when I find that bands are doing it themselves. Like, it blew my mind. Sabaton, completely self-managed their whole career.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wait, what? And their bass player was like, yeah, I've been our only manager in our entire career. But obviously that, that operation has grown to a point where they have a lot of people involved with a lot of things. But that's what I always tell bands that are like, when should we hire somebody for the road? When should we hire to do something like this? And I was like, when you feel that you can't do these things anymore. Like,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And that happened with Bloodywood recently too. Like they were like, we feel as though we're able to do all of this on our own. And it's like, well, if you feel like a manager is going to open more doors for you and you're going to learn stuff from them and stuff like that, then maybe think about it. But, one of the things I know from being in the industry too is once you get a manager or an agent or anything like that, percentages start getting shared around and,
right. Yeah. I think like it's almost important to almost not have a manager early on. Like I feel like you need to know what you're fucking up super early and
make the mistakes.
Yeah.
Learn
like you kind of need the experience because it'll help you select somebody to work with later on that will actually drive some meaningful results for your career. Not to say that like they're like managers are shitty or anything like that. They're definitely not. It's just like
it's the right fit.
Yeah. You need a good culture fit. You need chemistry, and like they need to care about your project. But you also have to know like what your goals are, I guess. Yeah.
And like, even though we have a manager, we still do a lot of stuff ourselves because that's one thing that we sort of came to an understanding and we liked about the situation. So it's still all the small stuff. We're still dealing with it. And then it's more about big picture strategy and formulating the right tours and, picking the right vision and music videos and people to collaborate with that is part of the big picture. So it's long-term planning and big picture type stuff.
And they also help us navigate, like, we're in this weird transitionary period, and I like to think of it in tiers, right? Like, we're tier 1, which is a small band, tier 2, mid-level band, tier 3, big band, tier 4, arena band. We're like slowly climbing the tiers, and every time you get into a new tier, like you're unlocking a fucking battle pass, like, there's so much in the unknown that you kind of need somebody to help you to navigate, especially someone with a ton of experience and understands where you are now and has a sort of a strategic mindset about it. So like for us at tier 2, I feel like we're a mid-sized level band, but we're very ambitious, and I think we're sophisticated in the way we operate. We needed somebody who understood what happens at a high level and can help translate what's going on there to our situation so we can kind of take steps together. So I think that's like the big benefit with working with Rock Nation. They have large backing and they have a lot of experience at next tier that you have to get to.
Mm-hmm. And I think where you guys are at, that's great. But one of the things that I always feel like has been overvalued for what you're calling like your tier 1 bands, and I say this from experience, when I was at that level, I think a lot of the smaller bands get it stuck in their head that they're not worth any value unless they have a manager and get signed. Right. And I think that's something that's always been there. It's like people won't take us seriously unless we get a manager or we get signed. And we were dumbasses. When we were in a band and we got a manager, we thought it was over. We were like, oh, we got a manager. We're going to start blowing up and getting on tours and stuff like that. And, one of the downfalls that you realize is if, a manager can help, but if you pick the wrong person, then after that, you're going to spend months, if not years, maybe cleaning up messes that they created for you, which sucks.
And it is partially like your own fault too, because like if you're not able to define where you want to go in your career, and like you don't understand like fundamentally how to operate your band as a business, which sucks to say because I know there's a whole like argument of like artistic integrity and just being an artist and all that. I personally think that's an unrealistic take because band is a business to some degree if you want to do this as a career full time. But yeah, like if you don't understand where you want to go, like how can you expect a manager to just give you that on a silver platter, right? Like it's a collaborative effort. Ultimately, they do work for you, but you have to at least have some insight to your business if you want to get to the next tier.
I find as well, a lot of bands, they want to focus on touring and writing and all those kind of things that are fun and awesome, the best parts of being a band. But they want to work their asses off in the day-to-day.
Yeah.
They don't want to learn about certain things, and that's, you got to put the time in and put the work in, and like we said, you got to wear those hats, and you have to be willing to do some things you don't want to do so you can get to that next level.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard.
So
I can understand like where they're coming from as well.
Yeah.
Like, everything changes all the time.
To this day, it still blows my mind, kind of going off what you were just saying, Kyle, like how bands don't learn certain things. It's like goes back to the merch argument we were talking about earlier. Like when Monuments posted the picture of their merch settlement sheet where they did have that insane one in Italy, as a former merch guy, I looked at it and immediately was like, this is settled wrong. Like whoever from their band settled this actually paid out more than they needed to. And that's one of the things I've always tried to tell bands is like, if you're doing your own merch or you're doing your own anything, you need to take the time to learn how it's done right. Because you could literally be just handing out money for things you don't need to. And that is what I've realized with a lot of bands. Like after I did that video on YouTube about how to accurately settle a merch sheet, I had like signed bands get a hold of me and were like, really? Like, this is how you do it when you're a merch guy? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we've probably given away thousands of dollars over the last like 6 months then. And I was like,
yeah.
I
mean, in our last band, we we fucked up a ton like that too. And I don't really know the Monument situation too well.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like, you know, nothing against them. I'm sure it was
Yeah.
a mistake or whatever.
None at all.
Like I totally get like that idea of just like handing money out and like not knowing what the hell you're doing. And like I get it too, like bookkeeping and accounting and shit.
It's hard. It's tough.
It's hard and it's boring. It's not fun. Like I hate tax season because I have to sit.
I
through a
still haven't
spreadsheet
even
for
done
like
mine.
weeks. It's gonna be a disaster. But it's like I totally get it. But like Kyle said, it's honestly really necessary to have some acumen in those topics. If again, if you want to do this,
you want to succeed.
Job, like you have to care about literally every aspect of the band, or at least like somebody in the band has to have that kind of mindset. I feel like if you're going to do it long term, like someone's got to be the guy, care about it. If you have multiple, even better. You know?
Well, also, there's going to be mundane, annoying things you don't want to do in the band, but delegate them.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's often 4, 5, 6 guys in a band. Somebody's good at something.
It's true.
So delegate the task, and because you don't want to spread one guy thin too.
For sure. And it's easy for me to sit here now and also say like, you know, like, oh, Monuments didn't do their thing right. But I mean, let's be honest here. I had to learn that at some point. Like, you know, I learned it maybe when I was in a band or maybe when I first started doing merchandise professionally. It's like, if you're not still learning new things every day, like
what you doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what are you
it.
doing? I mean, I have friends, even with this YouTube stuff, I've been doing this almost 3 years now. And I have friends that are like, how long did it take you to like figure all this out? I'm like, I'm still figuring it out, dude. Every day I'm still learning something new about how content creation works or the algorithm, or even as simple as editing a video. I learn like a new trick every time I'm doing it. And I'm like, if you're not constantly learning what you're doing, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, like your approach now is probably drastically different from what it was like even a year ago, I bet.
Yeah.
Right? Like for us too, it's like we're at a point now where it almost feels like we're at square one again, because again, like we're going up a tier, so like we've now witnessed this whole new world, both professionally and musically, that we want to get into, and like now we have to reevaluate like a whole new approach to it while still remembering like the fundamentals we've learned along the way, because they're still applicable. But and I know this is all like high level and it probably sounds like nonsense, but to me it's valuable, you know, like just to think in this way, I guess. It's work for us, I guess.
For sure. One thing that you said about 5 minutes ago that I want to touch on, because I feel that this is very important for people to understand. You had said that the managers work for the bands. I feel like people don't fully understand that at times. And there's a situation that's been going on recently that I'm not going to dive into because it's speculation and I don't like to speculate because I don't know what's going on. But Spirit Box recently announced that they're not taking part in the Popular Mons tour anymore. And all these people are like, oh, well, maybe their management or their booking agent booked them on that without them knowing. And to Courtney's credit, she responded to somebody on Twitter and said, nothing happens for a band without it going through the band first. Bands are the last stop on making decisions. And I thought I respected her so much for saying that, because people need to understand that at the end of the day, agents and managers work for the bands and not the other way around. Like they're there to help guide them and help them with things along their career. But the band is the final shot caller on all of the stuff that happens in their career and not the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally true. And at the end of the day, like we said, the manager's working for you, and they're going to want to work for that percentage. They want the band to be successful. You know what I mean? So obviously the band's going to pick the tour or whatever situation they're going to be a part of, but they're going to do their best to advise. Does this make sense? Does it? And you know, maybe with a situation like that, things develop and things change. You might have had an opinion in the beginning that was one way, and then something happens online or someone says something. I don't know exactly what happened with that, but it's always a developing situation. So
yeah,
it's tough to really know.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of Spirit Box, I wanted to get into some of the other things you guys are doing, because I mean, damn, dude, it's like I was looking at your schedule, and it's, I mean, even before this, but because we're on the topic of Spirit Box, I think it was starting in July
Yes.
5th or something like that. You guys are joining Spirit Box and Loathe over in Europe. And you guys have been to Europe before, but is it safe to say that this is one of the bigger things you're going to be a part of in Europe in terms of a tour?
Yeah, it's the biggest.
Yeah, this is
Europe
the
tour.
biggest one yet, for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
It's I think that one's UK only.
Oh, okay.
So we have some festivals in August shortly after that run.
Cool.
So we're going to be there pretty much the whole summer. Right. And we haven't been there since the Rings tour and right before COVID started.
Yeah, 2019, early 2020.
Yeah. And that was our first time in Europe. So this is our second time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, dude. And I mean, what a great tour that's going to be because, Spirit Box, obviously, we've seen blowing up lately too. And I feel like even though Spirit Box is a good gateway band for a lot of metalheads right now because I know people that are really getting into them that normally never listen to the music. But I feel like that'll be a good fan crossover for you guys as well, though, because, Spirit Box does have their more prettier stuff, but they can also be, pretty damn heavy too. And of course, Loathe on that same bill, like that's a good lineup for you guys,
really
man.
Great.
So, funny enough, we did a show in the summertime in Anaheim at the House of Blues with Spirit Box, Dayseeker, and us. So that was probably one of my favorite shows of our career thus far. So I know it's going to be an excellent time. And you're right, there's definitely quite a bit of crossover. And we went back to the same venue months later with We Came as Romans, and there were a lot of people from that show that came back. So I was very excited about that. So I can't wait for this UK tour. It's going to be great.
Oh, that's going to be sick. And then right before that, I think that really the big deathcore tour that everybody's talking about right now, Lorna Shore's second leg of their Pain Remains tour. I mean,
crazy lineup, right?
Dude, that lineup is so ridiculous. And for me, for my money's worth, I'm actually kind of sad that this one isn't coming back to Nashville because the first leg was here. Because you guys, Shadow of Intent and Lorna Shore are some of my personal favorite deathcore bands, and all very different styles as well. And that's one thing we talk about with deathcore now is that you've got your symphonic deathcore and your like tech deathcore and stuff like that, which is kind of, I think, where I would lean you guys more towards. But God, that is just such a killer lineup. Now, all these bands that are on that tour, are those all people that you have already done stuff with in the past, or are these going to be some first time meetings for you guys too?
We have the second tour we ever did was the Summer Slaughter 2019 tour.
Okay.
And Lorna Shore was also on that. A slightly different lineup at that point. So we've toured with them in the past. Obviously a lot has changed since that time for both bands. Shadow of Intent, we've done a few runs with them. They are good friends of ours, so we're very excited about that too. We've not toured with Body Snatcher or Boundaries.
Okay.
But I know some of the guys in Body Snatcher. So I'm very excited. I like all the bands on this run. Every band is amazing. So I'm looking forward to making some new friends and also seeing some old ones too.
Yeah. For my money's worth, dude, I personally, this has nothing to do with the other bands at all, but 3 out of 5 placement for you guys on that one, I believe it is. That's the money slot right there, dude, especially to a deathcore crowd, because people are still going to have energy. Now, I will say they didn't lose energy throughout the show that I saw, but like, that's just a punishing lineup. And if the crowds are anywhere how they were on the last run when I saw them, dude, it's going to be such a blast for you guys. Cause those crowds were, I mean, they were loud, they were energetic. The pits were going the whole time. And one of the things I thought was really cool is I'm too old for pits nowadays. Like I lived for that stuff when I was younger, but when I went and saw them in Nashville, dude, I sat my ass in the balcony, like right above front of house and just watched everything. And it was like, it kind of reminded me of like one of those old school pits where it was like, people were friendly. Like you could tell people were like making friendships in that pit and like helping each other out and stuff. Like it's good crowds for those bands, man. It's going to be sick.
Yeah, it's nice too because that lineup has something for everybody. Like, if you listen to deathcore, all, like you said, all the styles are distinct. So like, there's a really good reason for people to stay, from start to finish. So overall, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Crowds will be great too.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, the last time I looked, I think over half that tour is completely sold out already, which I never thought I would see the day where like a deathcore or even a death metal tour is selling out like a major club tour in advance. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think there's just 2 shows left. I think that still have tickets available.
Yeah, there was 3 and one of them just sold out. I think. So I think it will be fully sold out by the time it starts. Personally. I mean, or close to it.
The state of heavy music right now is so good.
It's in a great place. It's only going to get better, I think.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like, like that turn of the century when nu metal started taking over and stuff like that. And industrial metal was getting big. And like, I was explaining to all the Europeans on my Twitch stream the other day, cause they don't know what the hell TRL was. I was like, you guys don't understand that like in the early 2000s in the US, TRL was the big thing, the music countdown show that everybody watched. And I'm like, you had bands like Limp Bizkit, Korn, Static X, Spineshank, like all hitting number 1 on those.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it, that trend kind of died out. But now, 20 years later, it's like we're seeing it again, where metal is starting to become more mainstream than it ever has been in the last 20 years. And it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I think back then, like, you would see metal chart on the Billboard pretty high, like fairly often too. And I could see it getting back to that point pretty soon. Honestly, like guitar-based music in general, I think for the past couple of years has really pushed its way back into the front, which is a good thing. And I think like the alternative sort of culture is like cool again, which is pretty sick. So we'll see what happens, but it's encouraging.
I think the main thing of what it was the music, obviously, that came first, but there was also a style, an aesthetic, a feel, like a culture.
Yeah.
And right now, I think that's not quite there yet. Once that starts to spill in there more, then we're going to see a big upturn, a big increase, even more than we're seeing right now. Because I don't think we have a very defining style of clothing or hairstyle or any of those kind of things that come with a culture of music and a vibe. So if I think of nu metal, I'm thinking of like really baggy Jinko jeans and chains and frosted tips that were and mohawks and like skateboarding and these things. We need those tie-ins. We need those cultural figureheads in a sense. So I think as we progress with deathcore and metalcore, whatever subgenre, needs some more people that are a little crazy with their style that fans want to be like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that you brought culture into it, because that is, I mean, that's really what like nu metal around the early 2000s wasn't just the music. It was a whole vibe. It was a whole attitude. I mean, you could go to a mall and see a dude walking around and be like, that's a metal dude right there. Like, no question. You could see the style and know. And that's a really good point to make, because when I'm thinking about like metal right now, I can't think of anything that's like, like you said in the 2000s, I'm like, that dude's rocking Jankos, Etnies, and Dickies with like a ball chain and stuff. It's like, there aren't really any brands I can think of right now that culturally like metalheads are really, really into.
You did see this in the emo and scene days of the early 2000s, though, in the 2010s. That existed. You think about swoops and raccoon tails skinny jeans. That existed. But we need something right now. And that will elevate the genre to a new level, because right now it's purely hip hop.
Yeah.
Hip hop dominates.
Yep.
And if we want guitar-based music or guitar-driven music to be at the forefront, or at least relevant in the culture, we need some aesthetic.
Yeah. I feel like metal nowadays, from a culture standpoint, has taken a lot from other subgenres or other like sects of culture, which is good, of course. Like, it makes it more, I guess it makes it more interesting, but there's like not one defining feature that comes from metal, like that makes metal in the same way as it when it was recognizable.
No,
like the early 2000s and stuff. That's very true.
True. In fact, you see hip hop often grabbing old Metallica shirts and death metal tees and whatnot, but we haven't evolved with those things as much. We haven't. It's kind of the same thing. I love those shirts. I have tons of them. I wear them all the time, but we don't have something right now that is defining.
You know what I think it is? I think it's because like in like after 2010, everybody was able to create this stuff by themselves. You know, like there wasn't like the idea of star power and mystery in metal kind of disappeared for a bit because anybody could grab an interface and do it. You know?
Yeah, and the music,
which isn't a bad thing. The music
has gotten really good.
Yeah,
it's not to say anything from the past was bad. I don't mean that.
Right.
Yeah, music has taken a step further because a lot more people can create and get it out there, but there's not as much of that. There's not a stylist that's helping a band.
There's no like degree. Rock stars.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking about it as you're talking, and it's like, I think one of the problems maybe with the metal community at large is because the metal community has always touted itself as being very inclusive and we accept everybody and stuff like that. But there is a portion of it that doesn't. And I'm talking about the guys that like, if they see a hip hop artist wearing a Metallica shirt, and they're like, oh, you think they could even name 3 songs or tell me what their first album was? But you get people that get mad about other people taking what they think is theirs. And at a certain like surface level, I understand that because when I was in high school, metal wasn't cool. Like me and my friends got made fun of for being metalheads. Yeah, and now 20 years later, we see the Kardashians rocking Slayer shirts and Rihanna wearing like Crocus shirts and stuff like that. And it's like, there are these old school metalheads that are still just so, God, I can't think of the right word, but it's like, they're mad. Like they're legitimately mad that other cultures are liking what they like. And for me, it's like what you said. It's like metal takes culture from a lot of other cultures. It's like even my normal everyday look, like black jeans, like white Air Force Ones, like that's not a metal look. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Dang. I'm going to be
classic shoe though. Classic shoe.
Wow, dude, it's a solid shoe. It's comfortable too.
Sure is. It's very padded.
Yeah, but man, you guys are going to make me think about this for a while now though. It's like that's the missing link. It's like the music is there.
Definitely.
It's the culture and the mainstream that's not there.
We need something iconic.
Yeah.
Like it was. But just in this new wave, like just need something
like,
that's iconic.
Even when you think back in the day of the biggest new metal acts and singers and whatnot, you had Slipknot with Corey Taylor and the Masks and the whole vibe of Slipknot, and you had Fred Durst with his red hat and his vest.
Yep.
Everyone's a character. You would want to pick those guys and create them in WWE video games. You know what I mean? Because they had defining characteristics about them. We need to develop that. We need to find that in the metal scene. It doesn't have to be corny. It has to be an extension of who you are as a person, obviously, and what you value. But we need to start thinking about that more, because at the end of the day, the music is what's most important, but we're also here to entertain.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because it's so tight-knit now, like the idea that there is an entertainment aspect to this, like showmanship, that's almost been forgotten.
Yeah.
I feel like if that comes back, then we're back in the mainstream, no problem.
Well, I feel like before I jumped on with you guys, I was having a conversation with another artist from a band, from a German band. And I told them my take on this, looking at it right now, is like, this is why the European metal scene is doing so well right now, because mostly in the US, we have great bands, but it's your stereotypical, and this isn't everybody, but it's like, what do you get with North American bands a lot of the times? You know, like jeans, t-shirts, they go on stage and shred. Look at all these European bands that are blowing up right now. It is like, it's like theater. It's like all the, even a band like Electric Callboy. It's like these guys are going on stage and basically playing characters and going crazy for an hour and a half. And that's a big thing with a lot of these European bands is they have a theme and they stick to a character. And I think, like you said, it's like people want to be entertained, and that's what's really crushing right now, especially in the North American market. Some of these European bands are bigger than they've ever been here.
Oh yeah, and also the big North American acts too, like Spirit Box. Courtney has a character, the metalcore goddess, second coming of Christ for metalcore. You have Ice Nine Kills, which is totally theatrical in every sense, even down to their live show. You have Motionless in White. Their outfits are like polarizing.
Chris has his makeup and his style.
Yeah. Like those bands that have kind of figured out that's what is really missing. Like they're at the top, and they're at the top for a reason, because they've just figured that out. So I think the more we embrace that side, like you said, we already have great music. That's really just the missing piece, I feel like, in order to become like fully culturally relevant long term. So interesting to talk about. Welcome to the brain of Brand of Sacrifice.
I mean, you guys are going to make me think about stuff. I haven't even thought about this. Like right when Kyle, you started saying culture, I was like fucking onto something. I never even thought about that. Like,
yeah.
Well, the other thing that I often think about a lot, what we just talked about is the main thing, but the other thing I think about is you mentioned the pits being more friendly. Mm-hmm. I think that is reflective of some of the newer generation, the Zoomer generation. They're a little more, they obviously love the aggression and the heavy music.
Yeah.
They're nicer in the pit and whatnot, but they're also, we're at a point where we can make a big impression on an entire generation right now of kids that are coming to shows. I would love to be a gateway band that 15, 16, 17-year-old kids get into, and maybe it's Lorna Shore, they look up, I want to be like Will someday and sing in a band. And I look up to these guys, and when you listen to music when you're 15, 16, 17, we mentioned all those bands that we all listened to when we were kids. I still listen to all those bands all the time.
Yeah.
So we have an amazing opportunity right now to impact an entire generation, and that's why I really want to find a way for this genre of music and all the subgenres to find that cultural relevancy again, like we saw in the past with nu metal and the screamo and emo days of the early 2000s. So I'm really hoping for it. And I always try to touch on this every time I have a discussion like this.
Dude, these are the conversations that I love that we just get into on these podcasts. Cause like, this is the stuff that makes me think a ton. And what you were saying about the pits too, is like, there are things about the music scene that I remember, like when I first started going to shows as a metalhead, it was all about like push pits and you have your unspoken rules. If somebody falls, you pick them up. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I ever saw hardcore dancing, like crowd killing kind of hardcore dancing. It was in 2005. A group of my college friends and I went and saw, it was Chimera and Behemoth doing a tour in the US. Behemoth was opening, and that was your typical old school push pit. But during Chimera, we started seeing hardcore dancing, and I remember looking at my friends and I was like this, what? Like, and afterwards we were like, this will never take off. Like, this will never be a thing. And little did I know, 2 years later, you started getting like A Day to Remember is coming out, and like, that's all their crowds are. It's like my band used to tour with A Day to Remember when they were on their like first album. First show we ever did with them, it was pure insanity when they started their set. Like, fucking, kids doing karate and spinning heel kicks. And like, I was like, this is insane. And then that became an entire culture of that scene in the hardcore scene. Like, and now we're back to, there's a little bit of a mix of that. Like you see those hardcore kids and the metalheads at the same shows. And that's what I saw at Lorna Shore was, but it was the first time I really ever saw them being very respectful of each other. Like for years, the hardcore kids hated the metalheads and vice versa. But now it's like they've found a way to coexist at these metalcore and deathcore shows where they're actually helping each other out when people fall, and they're watching each other's backs and stuff. And it was a cool thing to see. And I think it is that younger generation that you're talking about that is
definitely.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I like to go in the balcony and observe
Yeah.
as well. My body can't take it. Performing, and I'm definitely not hitting any pits anytime soon for sure. But so that's sort of what I've observed.
Nice. So we're a little over an hour here, and I don't want to take up your guys' entire night, but there was one last thing I wanted to touch on, because recently from you guys, we've seen some new music. We had Exodus, and then more recently we had the music video for Dynasty. And it was funny because I filmed my reaction to Dynasty and I was like, there hasn't been an album announcement yet, but I assume since we've got new music, we're going to hear something soon. 2 hours after I recorded that reaction, you guys announced the EP. So between Death and Dreams, what is it? April 21st. Sorry.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
You're good with dates, man.
No, I had it on one of my screens just so I didn't forget. I'm not gonna.
Shouldn't have said that.
Like
This guy's like, oh, I came unprepared, but has it on his screen with all these notes.
Like full behind the scenes magic moment. 99% of the things that I do remember, because I have a very good memory and I try and do it, but I specifically have a tiny word document open that all it says is April 21st, because I wanted to remember that, because that's
the date.
That's big.
That's the date.
Brand new EP. I don't know how much information you'd like to give out about that yet, but how many tracks are we going to get on that one?
2 more tracks, so
Okay.
4 in total. So this, and I've been sort of discussing it a little bit with some other outlets, some stuff that hasn't come out yet, but for us, this is more of an experimental EP. Right now, we're trying a few different things out that we want to explore, perhaps in a longer form on a record. And we felt it didn't make sense to just do another album when we have all these things that we want to try out first.
Mm-hmm.
So every single song is way different than one another. And that's by design, because we want to sort of explore some new things. So I'd say this was like, it's part of us growing as a band. It's almost like the alpha version or the beta version of what's to come, sort of.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna really flesh those things out more. And I'm very excited about these tracks. I think we tried a lot of new stuff we hadn't touched on before. But
Well, yeah, I mean, even I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not great with song title names and remembering, because when I turn on Spotify and listen to music, I just blow through it, you know.
same.
But I think it was
same.
Dynasty. I believe it was like it's you singing on it. Was it Dynasty?
Oh
or
yeah,
Exodus?
that's Exodus.
That was Exodus. Okay.
Yeah, I think we felt with what's going on right now in the genre. I think it's important to add some new elements that other people aren't doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt with that song, it was calling for some melody in the chorus. And,
Yeah.
And Leo and I we always say that we'll never force anything. If it feels right, let's just roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
And in that one, it definitely felt right to have some melodic vocals, and it's still pretty aggressive. But I think we will explore that some more. I did sing quite a bit in our old band. Very different style than that, but
Yeah.
I think if the music calls for some melody, we'll definitely explore it, and we want to play around with some new sounds that are outside of the current toolkit that we're using.
Nice.
So,
I mean, you know, your fans are great, because like when I first heard that song, I was like, I had an initial moment of being very taken aback, because I wasn't expecting like melody and singing, but very quickly I was like, wow, this works so good on this. And then your guys' diehard fans were like, well, Kyle has sang before, like, and I think that's a good point to make about a lot of harsh vocalists and the extreme vocalists too, is like, you know, Will is a good example of that, where all the people that are trying to hate on Lorna Shore are like, yeah, but all he can do is, you know, guttural pig noises. And I'm like, dude, he's releasing videos of him doing clean vocal takes to like Spirit Box and stuff. Like, dude, these guys can sing. It's just the music they're playing doesn't always call for that.
Yeah. And our fans are the best, man. They're just, the great thing about our band is like, we incorporate so many different types of sounds, post-production, and like I feel like there's a pretty large stylistic difference between what we do and what other deathcore bands do, and it gives us a leg up in a sense that we can kind of play around with diversity in the sound a little bit more without like,
alienating.
Yeah, like making too many people mad. And Exodus was definitely a gamble for us because like that is very explicitly a clean chorus, right? Like a clean melodic chorus, which we had never really played around with before, and it ended up being our fastest growing song of like all time.
Yeah, it's killer.
So,
Yeah.
And like I think the fans, like, they just loved it, which was excellent. And like it gave us some validation, like, we're able to experiment with our sound a little bit and people are still gonna like it because it's still us, which I'm really happy about. So
I actually think too in that particular song, because it gave you some melody, the breakdown section felt way heavier than it actually is because there was that light with the darkness.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I actually am a fan of having that level of dynamic. Sometimes it can be jarring, but if it's done tastefully, and I think that's the name of the game for us, is like doing things that are tasteful. Something that you can go back and listen to in like 5 years, 10 years and not be like, whoa, that's really a product of its time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's the goal. We want to write something that you can really go back to and not feel as if it's dated. So.
Well, your dynamics, thing is a great point because just rolling back to like A Day to Remember, for example, those guys seem so much heavier than they actually are because they have those super catchy, clean sing-along pop choruses and then followed up with, pretty simplistic breakdowns for the genre. But those breakdowns hit so much harder because of what came before it. So like the whole dynamic of it is spot on. And it's like, I do see some commentary from some fans in the deathcore scene that do say like, man, I love breakdowns and stuff, but it's like sometimes these bands just keep doing breakdown after breakdown and don't really do anything else. And it's like, I get that. Like sometimes there are moods where that's all I want, but that's why I think Exodus was so good when like initially when I first heard it I was like, wow, there's so much versatility and dynamics here that, I really feel like that's what's going to set you guys apart from a lot of bands, in this scene. And also, I just have to throw it out there. Your little TikTok and reels and stuff that you guys did about how you're like creating some of the parts of this are so damn entertaining.
I'm glad to hear that, man.
Yeah.
Those are fun to make. Those are actually hard to make, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
that's why
I couldn't imagine being a full-time like TikTok influencer. That's such a pain in the ass.
No chance. That's like, I even talked to some other YouTubers like Nick Nocturnal and stuff that are all over TikTok. And I was like, I've tried to do it. And I'm like, I don't know how you guys have the patience for this. Cause maybe I'm old now and I just don't get it. But like,
yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard. And like, you can't predict that algorithm at all.
No.
Like TikTok's so weird because the people who follow your page aren't necessarily the ones that are going to see content. So it's like, it's such a challenge to like figure out what exactly to put on there at certain points in time. So,
yeah,
but it's fun. It's definitely fun.
When I try, like what I've learned about doing content is that when you're making something, you can't have the expectation you can't try and make something viral. Like, cause if you try to create a video that you think is going to go viral, it's not going to. Every time I've ever had something blow up, it's the last thing I would have expected. Like one of my most recent TikToks was, I think this is Taylor from Left to Suffer did a thing where he was like, do a blind reaction to these deathcore vocals. And I had just woken up and had my coffee and I was like, all right, or try not to stank face is what he was doing. And I did a reaction, like a 20-second reaction, trying not to stank face to him doing his vocals. That video got like 100,000 views, like right away. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
I know, it's so weird, dude.
Yeah.
Like I kind of know what's going to work.
Yeah.
I feel like there are like certain like subsects of content that you can put on there that like you can get a feel for, but like the majority of the time it's like no idea what's gonna happen. So you just try to make something quality that people will enjoy and then hopefully get some traction from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last thing before I let you guys go, I always ask this to everybody that's on here because I feel like it is important. From you guys who are actually in the band with the new EP coming out, the tours going out, stuff like that, what would you suggest to fans or anybody that might be discovering you? What is the best ways for them to support you guys, whether it's financially or not?
Just listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you consume. You want to buy merch, feel free, but ultimately, like, most important thing is that take a listen, and if you like what you hear, that's great. Welcome to the branded ones, and we hope to see you at a show, you know?
Yeah, come say hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
That's pretty much all there is to it.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, I think people would be surprised to find that a lot of bands, like, that's their answer, is like, they don't care about buying merch. They're like, just listen to our music and show your friends, and that's it.
Yeah. That's the best way to support any artist, I feel like. You know, spread the word, and if you like it, and we'll see you out there when we see you.
Nice. Well, to everybody listening, just as a reminder, Brand of Sacrifice is going to be on the Pain Remains tour with Lorna Shore starting March 30th. So about the time this is coming out. And then you're going to be over in the UK, and then you got summer festivals. But before that, April 21st, brand new EP, Between Death and Dreams, is coming out. And I will have links to all of this in the video on YouTube, as well as links to Shibori Threads. But guys, thank you so very much for giving me your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks
for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon. Maybe we can catch up again after some of these tours and the EP comes out, and keep me up to speed with what's going on with you guys.
Definitely, man. And likewise, I want to hear about what's going on in your life too. Sounds like you got a lot going on.
Yeah, we can get into that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, have a great night, guys. It was great having you on here, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, likewise, you take care. Good night.
Take care.
All right, see ya. Well, thank you once again to Kyle and Leo, and thank you to every single one of you that have watched this on YouTube or listened on Spotify or Google or Apple or anywhere else you can listen to podcasts. This was a fun one, man, and I always find these first time conversations interesting because I've never talked to these guys before. And I think sometimes you can tell when we first start a podcast, like the first 20 minutes or so, we're kind of feeling each other out and just getting the vibe and talking. And then it starts getting more and more deep into stuff. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And one of the things I've been thinking about a ton since we had it was what Kyle was talking about with metal culture right now. I mean, I've talked about this with other people too, and it is true. It's like, you think 20 years ago about the culture around the metal scene, and it was very apparent from the way people talked and acted and dressed and all that. And now, while heavy and extreme music is popular, we don't really have that same cultural connection that we had back then with like the style and stuff like that. So it's been really interesting to think about. But I talked to these guys a little bit after we were done, just a little more one-on-one, and they're just super, super nice dudes. And I love bands like this, and I wish for nothing but the best for them going forward. And I hope that I get to catch one of the shows. I did see that the Pain Remains tour is coming to about a 2-hour drive for me up in Evansville, Indiana. So I might take a trek up there for that one just to see. But there's a lot of other good shows coming up here in Nashville too, man. I mean, I'm definitely planning on going and seeing Whitechapel and Archspire soon. And then Veil of Maya and Orbit Culture just announced a one-off show from the tour that they're on with Avatar, where they're going to be playing in Nashville. So I'm going to go see that. A lot of cool stuff coming up, man. And that's one of the things I like about being home a lot is I can go to other concerts and not worry about working, just go and enjoy myself. But speaking of working right now, I know a lot of you guys already know I'll be tour managing the Electric Callboy North American tour this summer, and I've already started work on that. We're advancing shows and renting all the gear and stuff like that, and I'm getting really excited for that. So that'll be hitting Canada and the US in August and September. So if anybody that's listening is planning on going to one of those, let me know. Maybe I'll meet up with you there. But once again, you can check out all the information on Brand of Sacrifice at their website, which is brandofsacrifice.com. All the links to their socials and their merch and their tour dates and all that stuff's on there. You can also check out Kyle and Leo's clothing brand, Shibori Threads, at shiborithreads.com. They just had a recent drop as they were talking about. They did some of the Dark Souls stuff. The Gojira stuff has dropped. They got some awesome stuff, man. So go check it out. But yeah, coming up in the future on this podcast, I do have a couple things lined up. Immediately, I need to reschedule the Nanowar Steel podcast. That will probably be interesting, as it always is with those guys. And they just dropped an awesome album a little while ago, too. So I'm excited to talk to them about their touring schedule and a lot of the other crazy shenanigans they've been up to. But that'll wrap it up for this episode, man. If you want to keep up with me on social media, my handle on just about everything is at TankTheTech. I'm most active on Instagram. I post a lot of pictures and videos from tour and stuff like that. And just as a reminder, this podcast is available both in video format on YouTube, but also in audio format on Spotify, Google, Apple, and anywhere else that you like to listen to podcasts. Because I know a lot of people just like to listen to audio when they're in the car or on planes or at the gym and whatever. So I wanted to make that available too. But yeah, man, this was super fun. I can't wait to do more of these. I got to really dive back into content for Twitch and YouTube because, again, COVID knocked me out for a little bit. But, I appreciate every single one of you that takes the time to listen to this because there are a lot of podcasts and there is a lot of content out there. So it is much appreciated that you spend some time on this one. But I'm going to wrap this one up, man. Wherever you guys are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. Thank you so very much for taking the time to listen. And I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Back Lounge Podcast.